And in wealth is a game of two halves. In the first half, you're trying to build a portfolio, you're trying to build your wealth. You find a partner, you have some kids, so you started to amass that wealth. But what a lot of people forget then is how to protect that wealth. And the best analogy is a game of snakes and ladders. In the game of snakes and ladders, everyone's hopefully played as a kid. The aim is to get up the ladder and get to the top of the board as quick as possible. When you think about these snakes, it's these what if questions that a lot of people don't answer in life. And that is stuff like death. If you've created wealth, how are you going to pass that wealth on in a meaningful way? If you get a critical illness, how are you going to defend against those snakes?
The body is the foundation to having true wealth. So I don't believe that you can have true wealth unless you have mastered your body, your mind, and your bank account. Because there's so many people out there that have got tons of money, but are yet either really unhealthy or really unhappy.
I am a food enthusiastic, meat enthusiastic, fitness enthusiastic. I have my own business and I'm a property investor. Rings, which I actually look, that's the corner of my room. You can actually see my room.
Oh, wow.
And a treadmill there. So it is very high value. So
welcome to the Carnivore Entrepreneur Show, where health unlocks true wealth. It's time to reclaim your strength, ignite your energy, and live life with purpose. Master your body, sharpen your mind, and dominate your path. Live life how it's supposed to be lived, on your terms. Let's go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the next interview on the Carnivore Entrepreneur Show. I'm Grant Hutchby, the Carnivore Entrepreneur, and I have with me today Akash. So I won't take away his thunder. I'll let Akash do his own intro. So over to you, Akash.
Thanks for having me, Grant. My name's Akash. I am a food enthusiastic, meat enthusiastic, fitness enthusiastic. I have my own business and I'm a property investor. And I'm really happy to share my life lessons with you guys here.
Excellent. Excellent. Love that intro. Thank you very much, Akash. So before we get into it, there's one question that I have to ask everyone that is on the show, and you wouldn't be on here if you didn't qualify, but the Carnivore Entrepreneur is all about meat, muscles, mindset, and money. Tell us what qualifies you to be a carnivore entrepreneur.
So meat, I've had a very unique journey with meat, which I will share. I'm happy to share that. Muscles, it's always about getting more fitter. And I've had a very unique journey. I've worked with Akash Desai, and I've had a body transformation at the age of 39, which is fantastic. And fitness is probably my highest value. And then obviously business, I think you should get a different mindset when you're in business. And I've been doing that since 2016. So yeah, I think I've got some unique takes on all aspects that you're going to be talking about, Grant.
Excellent. Cool. Well, you wouldn't be here if you didn't qualify. So I carefully pick the people that are coming on, anyone that shows a keen interest in what we do and, has got an entrepreneurial spirit. And that's what this is all about. It's all about how do we create an amazing body, mind, and bank account in the entrepreneurial world. So we know each other from the Property Entrepreneur. You're part of the advanced program, and that's how we got connected. But what made you create the black box for estate protection planning? Because that's a massive thing for entrepreneurs. But so what made you create the black box?
Yeah, so I guess if we start with the business side and the wealth side, wealth is a game of two halves, right? Which is the first half, you make your wealth. And in Latin, wealth is actually more than just money. It's actually your holistic well-being, which includes your health. And I'll go further and say it includes your family's well-being. So, you've got a family, you've got children. So look at it holistically. And in wealth is a game of two halves. In the first half, you're trying to build a portfolio, you're trying to build your wealth. You find a partner, you have some kids. So you started to amass that wealth. But what a lot of people forget then is how to protect that wealth. And the best analogy is a game of snakes and ladders. In the game of snakes and ladders, everyone's hopefully played as a kid. The aim is to get up the ladder and get to the top of the board as quick as possible and avoid the snakes. But when you think about these snakes, it's these what if questions that a lot of people don't answer in life. And that is stuff like death. If you've created wealth, how are you going to pass that wealth on in a meaningful way? If you get a critical illness, how are you going to defend against those snakes? And if you look at what the rich people doing, like the Duke of Wellington, he had a multi-billion-pound portfolio. He had a trust. And I'm not saying trust is right for everyone, and nothing I'm saying today is advice, but it's about looking at what wealthy people do and trying to use that to try and help ourselves. So the black box is a way of defending against the snakes and helping protect your family. At a base level, it has a what if plan, which is what if something happens to me? And I think people need to be brave, because a lot of people think, when they're younger, they're invincible, right? And it's not going to happen to me. Your monkey brain says it's not going to be me. But the reality is, we know it's coming. And the best thing you can do for your family is ask those. So at base level, it's what if. We ask these questions, we create a what if plan. And then everything falls off of that. The will, the power of attorney, the life insurance. And we've neatly packaged everything up into a black box that our clients get. And that helps their family find anything should they need. And that's protecting their family in the second half of the game.
Yeah. I'll be honest. We had, when we first started our journey, we heard a lot about, seriously rich people that hadn't written wills. And that was one of the first thing that we did. And it's just surprising how long it can go on for when someone doesn't have a will. What do you do with their estate when they die? And we just want ours protected. And I think that's, should be something that entrepreneurs think about. And I think it's a massive point. And like, we're going through the process with Black Box, and it's definitely allowed us to align everything and make sure that, everything works with each other. Because sometimes if you get that wrong, you can have different parts of your planning pulling against each other. And, it's important they all work in harmony. So yeah, really, really good. So I guess let's get into some of your stuff then. So I always start with the body, because I truly believe that the body is the foundation to having true wealth. So I don't believe that you can have true wealth unless you have mastered your body, your mind, and your bank account. Because there's so many people out there that have got tons of money, but are yet either really unhealthy or really unhappy, or both,
Yeah.
right? And, to have true wealth, you need all three. So I know that you are massively into your health and fitness. So how has physical discipline shaped your entrepreneurial performance, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, this is a topic I could go on for days about, Grant. It's probably my favorite topic. I mean, I've done John D. Martini's values test, and every year I do it, health is always at the top. So I'll take you back, because I think every journey needs to start at the beginning before I can talk about kind of where I am. So
yeah, everyone loves a story. Let's go.
Yeah, I mean, my dad came over from India in the 70s. He came over as a lecturer to help, teaching, because there was a shortage of teaching. So his highest values were education. I'm not academic by any means. I'm actually dyslexic. So the early years of my life were very difficult, because I had my dad, by his standards, seeing that I'm not living up to that. So I grew up a lot of my life thinking I was stupid. Academic system, I failed English and maths GCSE, not once but twice. So by the system's definition, I wasn't good enough, right? And a lot of my life I felt that. And it wasn't until later life that I really kind of found my self-confidence and self-esteem. And funnily enough, it came through the physical, which is what you're talking about. So I think, just like you, the physical is, it might be a bit of a faux pas, but it's one of the easiest to change, or easiest to see feedback on, right? Because if you're losing weight, the scales reflect it. So you start to get real positive affirmations. So I'd been training most of my life in martial arts. I love martial arts. More recently, been in Kung Fu for 15 years. But I never really aesthetic. I never looked like I was that. I still had the typical Indian body with the skinny arms and a fat belly. And that always kind of played on me. Then I met Akash Desai, who's a trainer for R&T. As soon as I saw his post, I said, look, I want to come and see you. I went out to see him physically and signed up. And I went through body transformation at age 39. And the biggest thing that came out of that physical transformation was my mental change, which is, I always had that low self-worth. And through that physical transformation, it made me realize that anything is possible. And once you go through body transformation, you see that weight's gone. You're like, well, sugar, anything really is possible. If I can do this here, I can do it in business. I can do it anywhere. So that physical transformation changed my mindset massively. And I was always a positive thinker anyway, outside of that. So that's my kind of physical transformation journey. More recently, I would focus on the Kung Fu. So weights is great. Again, now I'm going to go down weights versus other different types of training. Weights is great, but it's very linear, right? It's very one directional. So, you're lifting a weight. So it's great, but I just don't find it fun or play, which is why Kung Fu for me is play. And additionally, I've been doing calisthenics, which is rings, which I actually look, that's the corner of my room. You can actually see my room.
Oh, wow.
And a treadmill there. So it is very high value. So rings is really fun because that's a skill. If you're holding rings and you're doing certain movements, it's a skill and it brings your brain into play. So I do Kung Fu with my children, which I think is a great way to spend time.
Oh, wow. So bring the family into it, don't you?
Yeah, exactly. And when you talk about health, the way I interact with the world, everyone's got different ways. The way I interact is physical. So I'm always just playing with my kids if I can. And so Kung Fu is a great way. So my daughter's, part of it. My son's part of it. Last year we went to Malaysia for a competition. This year we came back from China to train, which was absolutely amazing. Next year we've got another competition. So what I did is I reframed that and said, well, how can I bring the family in? So now we're all having fun together. And then I do the rings, which is to stay strong. So that covers the cardio, the general athletic, just trying to be able to do what I need.
Mobility and things like that.
Exactly. But the rings give me the strength that I need to be a dad. One of the things I've reframed to my said is, if I can't carry my kids, even though they're getting bigger, I haven't trained enough. So I try and train to keep up with being able to lift my kids. And more recently, we climbed Snowdon with my son as part of Property Entrepreneur. And there was times he struggled. And, I'm very proud to say I was able to carry him for those parts, right? And and that was because of my training. So more recently, I'm focusing on rings, which is slow, steady, it takes time, but it would be great to get a skill, which is muscle up, and in Kung Fu. So it's been a long journey, but I feel without my exercise, I would not be as far as I have been in other areas of my life. I would say peaking through exercise has really helped me with my bank account, my mindset, and everything else.
It's amazing how it transitions into so many other areas of your life, how getting your body to where it needs to be so that energy just transforms everything that you manage to get. But that's what I find anyways. And I think everyone approaches getting a fit and healthy body in different ways, and your way is the way that you engage with it. We're not here to say, you've got to go and do rings or Kung Fu or go and pump iron in the gym, right? Like, as an example, I actually find going to the gym and lifting weights fun, right? But you don't. So everyone has to do things their own way. Like, we're part of a group, and one of the guys just loves running every single day, and that's individual to each person. But the one thing that is consistent is the fact that it transitions into other areas of your life, and the behaviors, I've talked about this before, the behaviors that you have to do to get a fit and healthy body are the same to get a fit and healthy bank account or mind, which is, having that consistency, having the discipline, and having delayed gratification. If you can master those things, you're going to be successful in all areas of your life.
Absolutely. And if you look at some of the successful sports personalities, like if you look at Arnold Schwarzenegger, for example, Arnold Schwarzenegger, a lot of people may or may not know this, but he became a billionaire in property. Before he became an actor, he was a millionaire in property. So he became Mr. Olympia with that ruthless consistency, right? He then took that and applied that to property to become, rich. He then took that to become a movie star. and then took that to become, a
Certified
politician, right? But it all
or
started.
governor or whatever it was.
Yeah, exactly. But it all starts with a discipline. It all starts with a
Yeah.
discipline from exercise that you can then take. And I try to impart that on my kids and that's just taking those principles, but it goes even deeper, Grant, because my daughter's been doing gymnastics since she was 2 years old. And I think gymnastics is probably one of the peak of sports. And that's my opinion on it. It gives you everything you need. But additionally, the big things that I don't think are taught in school come from exercise or parts of exercise is, when you fall down, you get back up every single time. That's resilience, right? If you learn a
Yeah.
skill, you learn that skill. No one else learn that skill for you. It's through your own hard adversity you learn that. And if they're doing it over years and decades, because when she's 12, she'll be doing it for 10 years. She would have stuck to something for 10 years. So I think, through exercise, you learn so many more life skills and perseverance. Because what I don't want her to do is be able to, so I'm not massive on grades based on my background. You can tell, I'm not going to be pushing Aria or my son Caden on academics. But what I am really keen on is effort. Like, I want you to try, because in life, it's effort that's rewarded. So what I say to them is effort. So my son's been coming to Kung Fu. He's not the best just yet. He's 6, but I absolutely reward him because he comes every time and he tries. And that's all I want. I'd rather see him try and get a low result than not try and get a high result, because talent can only get you so far. So that's the other part of exercise that I don't think people talk about, how important that is for kids, to help them with those softer skills that are not in school as well.
Yeah, definitely. And that's why, I've always encouraged my kids to do things actively, and they're part of, football teams and things like that. It gives them their social aspects and, the exercise side of it. And, I want to help them with nutrition and, exercise to help them develop in the sport that they want to play, and that's an important thing to do as a father, to your kids. I guess that's a lot on exercise. What are your sort of rules around nutrition?
Yeah, so very, very neatly leads on to it. So before, I didn't really have many rules. Now I'm very, very conscious of nutrition, what goes into my body. And again, I'm a bit older, right? So I'm going to be 45 this year. So I have to manage my energy accordingly, right? For anything I do, I'm very conscious. I need to manage my energy. If I need to go give a talk, if I'm going to help my dad with a gazebo, whatever it is, I just need to manage my energy, because I want to get my exercise in. I want to, have time for the family, and then do whatever else thing. So you got to manage your energy. Energy comes from either creating energy through exercise or nutrition. So now it's all about I'm on a bit of a cut, and it's about just eating right things. But regardless of the cut, it's always about eating right things and imparting that knowledge to my kids. So in the morning, I have oats. I think that's the best thing you can have. It's a funny story, actually. My daughter loves Cheerios or cereal, as most kids do. And then I was like, look, you're going to school for a full day of learning, right? And like, this is just not fueling your body. It might taste good, but it's not fueling your body. So then I've said it to her a few times, and I do give her porridge, because I don't like porridge. And I'm like, okay, fine. So I found this video which tried to explain what Cheerios was, which is basically sugar, starch, which then absorbs the sugar. And she better understood it. I was like, this really makes sense. So now she's back on the porridge, which is great. So my son as well. So it's not only important for me, it's important for my family. So for me now, it's just eating the right balance between your vegetable, carbs, and your protein sources. And protein will come on to in terms of the meat and stuff. But vegetables is also a massive one, right? So just because we eat meat, I'm gonna poo-poo the vegetables, but I
Yeah.
I have a lot of vegetables. So, in my food plate, I almost have like 150 grams, 200 grams. That's like a big bowl. When I eat, even I've got a big bowl of food, and 1/3 is the protein, probably 200 grams of vegetables, and then a small amount of carbs. So yeah, and that's fairly consistent. I've still got my PT as well from R&T. So I've been on there for 5 years now. And I
Oh
think
wow.
it's really important, because I believe in having a coach for everything, right? So I've got my
Yeah.
food teacher, I've got my PT, who's also my nutritionist, I've got my coach for my rings, I've got my financial coach, I've got PE. Everyone's got a different skill set that they can bring. So yeah, nutrition I think is massively, massively important. And where I try to move from taste to fueling my body. There is obviously taste because I do love a good steak, which I'm sure we'll talk
Yeah.
about. But yeah, it's more about fueling your body to help you do what you want in life. And there are times when I want an ice cream, I want that. That's fine, but that's the switch. It's the minority. I mean, even yesterday I had a McDonald's, right? I drove up to Birmingham. It was 2.5 hours. I was absolutely shattered. I hadn't prepped because I just didn't have time. And I had a McDonald's. But the point was that
Yeah.
McDonald's is 1 in 40 meals, right? So
Sure.
it's not.
Yeah, absolutely.
The problem is if I have McDonald's 39 times and try and eat vegetable once. So I think with nutrition, it's about long-term consistency rather than just trying to nail one or two.
Yeah, it's not about perfection. And one of the things that I talk about in my book is the 80-20 rule. And that's, 80% meat first, whole foods. So what I mean by meat first is not no vegetables. It just means make sure you get your protein in first, right? Get your, 2 grams per kilo of body weight of your protein in, and then the rest whole foods.
Yeah.
And then you got that 20%, that 20% of planned treats that you want to have. You knew that you were on the road and you knew that you weren't going to prep, and you knew you probably have a McDonald's. You're not guilty about it.
Yeah.
You're okay with it because 80-90% of the time you're eating good whole foods, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's half the problem is people will go gun-ho and be like, no, I'm not going to eat anything bad. And then what happens is they get so sick of eating good food all the time and no treats whatsoever, they fall off the wagon and they go the total other way. And that's the problem, is when you don't plan to have those treats, or you're okay with having those treats 20% of the time, you go stir crazy.
Yeah.
And I think people don't realize that, right?
Exactly. And the thing is, I learned something from again, the other Akash is just don't pigeonhole yourself into anything, right? Don't call yourself anything. There was a point where I was thinking of going vegan. Everyone goes through these different scenarios. And the main thing of that part was I wanted to drink less dairy because of the impact it has on cows. But rather than say, look, I'm going to go vegan, I thought, why limit yourself to that? If I'm trying to reduce it, if I just change it out for oat milk, once a day, and it reduces my milk by 50%, that's it. I don't need to say I'm X or Y, and then I'm doing the best I can.
Yeah.
Right. And as long as you're making improvements, that's what you're doing. And you're doing it for you rather than anyone else. As soon as you start, like you said, pigeonholing yourself into one category, that I'm vegetarian, I'm vegan. If you want to be, that's fine. But an easy way to start is just try it. Don't label it. And I'm sure you'll get a lot more progress, because then, like you said, as soon as you fall off it once, your whole image that you've projected is now
absolutely. And I think that's half the problem with a lot of things that are going on at the moment, where we label things way too much. And the only label that you should stand by is your own individuality. Exactly. Is who you are, right? So I've called myself the Carnivore Entrepreneur, but there's a deeper meaning to that, right? Carnivore doesn't mean just meat. Carnivore means meat first. Entrepreneur doesn't mean that I'm only in one business. Entrepreneur means, I'm living life on my terms, right? And that's the point, is, you create who you are, and that's your label, but you don't have to fall under anyone else's label for you, and that's, I think, really, really important when we call ourselves things like vegan or carnivore or, male, female, they, them, all that stuff, whatever, and I think that's half the problem with a lot of things that are going on these days. We try and label things too much and put people in a box.
Yeah, exactly. And with my kids, what we tried to say to them is, look, don't eat meat initially. This was the thing. And you can decide when you're ready once you have an informed decision. And then one day something quite funny happened. So I went down to get some food from the shops, and in the butchers they were giving out these ham legs, right?
All right, yeah.
And I brought it home and I left it on the table. and like the primal instinct of my son just kicked in, right? We never enforced one way or the other. If they wanted to try it, it'd be fine. And he grabbed that leg of, he grabbed that leg and he just devoured it. And again,
Wow.
and that was his journey towards meat, and that's fine. Like I said, we don't push or pull either way. We just want them to make a decision. And since then, he's been eating meat. He's been coming out with me for steak. So, that's absolutely. Even my daughter's been trying it. But the point is, it's her choice, and I think that's important. We never labeled it. You can or you can't do this. Just up to you, and you can decide how you want. But that's really nice because now, more recently, me and my son, we went to Meat and Wine Company, which is a place in London. I don't know if you've ever been. Banging steak. I mean, banging steak, right?
Nice.
The problem is it sets the bar way too high because when you go anywhere else, it's not as good. But again, even I had my relationship with steak, especially because in our culture, in Hinduism, you're not supposed to eat beef, right? Or even meat.
Yeah.
I'm not really like a strong Hindu. Hinduism is not a very there's different levels, but it's not massively like you can or you can't do this, right? So I didn't eat beef for quite a while, and then we went out. I tried it, and I absolutely fell in love with it. So now, I am going out for steak, where I can. When I've done a hard week, I'm like, yeah, let's go for a steak. It's definitely nice.
Excellent. I mean, I eat a lot, and I find that red meat is the only thing that really truly fills me up. Like I can eat and eat and eat and eat and eat, but if I have a nice big steak, it fills me up. And I guess when you think carnivore, you think steak, don't you?
Yeah,
but I eat lots of different things, and I think that's where maybe I need to be clearer about. But it's in the name, isn't it? It creates a little bit of an emotion around it, which is cool. I think you said to me once that you saw it come up and it just made you want steak.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. All right, wicked. So the mind then. So Akash, do you have any sort of mindfulness practices that you do on a regular basis to keep your mind, sharp? That's aside from exercise.
Yeah, I was about to say, I think exercise is probably the biggest one that I help to keep my mind in check because, and I will just touch on that briefly, is the other part of exercise is, as a male, as a father, I think people don't talk about it enough, right? There is stress. There's pressure. You're the dad. You're the potential breadwinner, and there's a lot of you're playing with the family, but you're also trying to do two things at the same time. So I just don't think dads get enough props. And I want to say to all the dads, you're doing fantastic. Just keep doing what you're doing. I know it's an underappreciated. I know it's an underappreciated role because no matter what you're doing, you're still not doing enough. But exercise there is that one release that reduces your stress levels down and can get you back. So I think exercise is a mindful one. The other thing I do is, when do I use my mind? Right. So you're saying, what tips do you have? So I use it when it's the peak, right? So I wake up early. I haven't done so as much and I'm still playing with that. So I used to wake up at 3:30 in the morning,
wow,
exercise, and then get on with work. And more recently I haven't, which is fine. Although I am going back to that because I need some more time. And the only way to do that is before the kids wake up. But I find morning, when there's the silence, there's nothing happening, my mind is at optimum, right? And I'm a creator, for people who know what wealth dynamics is. And in the morning, it's almost like the universe is just talking to me. So it's a creative task or anything like that. I do all of my work in the morning. So being self-aware, I think, is my answer to that. Come lunchtime, have any meetings in the afternoon, but come 5:00, Grant, I'm dead. I'm brain dead. Right? I say to my wife,
sounds like me.
Yeah, I'm like to my wife, look, hun, you can say whatever you want, but you're not going to get any meaningful conversation from me. Like if we want to do this, let's have this earlier. Well, my wife is the opposite. She really starts to pick up in the evening, and everyone has different kind of circadian rhythms. But for the brain, I think two things: understand your own strengths and weaknesses, right? And I think double down on your strengths. A lot of people say round down your weaknesses. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think
No, I agree with double down on your strengths, 100%.
Yeah, that's what your gift is. Why, it's the analogy is, you don't want to be a monkey a fish climbing a tree when you can be a fish in water,
Yeah.
right? So be the fish in water, and be aware of when you are most fully powered up. And in Hinduism, again, there's something called the golden hour where you're literally, your brain is at the highest. And again, I call it cognitive fatigue. But if you've made all these decisions at the morning, you're going to just be out by the afternoon. Why try to make big decisions in the afternoon? So my main mindset is A, being aware of your strengths and weaknesses, and B, utilizing it when you've got the power. Don't try to make big decisions in a place where you just haven't been geared up for it.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good point. I mean, it sounds like you use exercise to keep your mind sharp, but actually what you do more of is you make sure that you use your mind for different things at the times that you know that your mind is going to be best suited to them.
Yeah.
Like exactly what I do, which is I do my most demanding thinking work first thing in the morning, because that's when your mind is at its best. Then you move on to sort of like those other tasks that don't require much brain power. And by the end of the day, you're just doing your tick box stuff that doesn't really take any brain power whatsoever. But you want to reserve some of your energy as well for your family when they get home, which is why my sort of general work stops at 2:30/3 p.m. because my family come home and I want to spend time with them. And, that's my sort of wind down process, because I'm go from about 4:30 in the morning.
Exactly. I think that there's 2 points on that. The first is, don't get caught up in the hype in the morning. Like when you start, like there's so much you could catch up on social media, WhatsApps, emails, but none of that really is, unless it's super urgent, you can skim through it. It's not going to be there. Whereas what's going to move the boat forwards is the thing you want to do, right? And otherwise, you've just used up your brain power, and now you're going to go back to that important thing. So that's one thing. And then secondly, I've got 3 points. Second point is I'm just trying to be more cognizant of my relationship with my phone. So there's a time when I was really good. I leave at 5 o'clock, but now it's almost like this. And at nighttime I try and keep it away from me. At the moment it's quite far away, but in the night, if I'm going toilet or something, I'm like, oh, come to me, check what's going on. Oh, you evil thing, leave me alone. But then I get, there are times when I get caught up in it. So I'm trying not to do that because I think it's distraction. But the other thing I'm really trying to do, and I've been listening to more Naval Ravikant, which I think is fantastic, is happiness is two simple ways you can do it. Firstly, you can achieve it through wealth to then get all the things you want and then, think that you're happy, which you may or may not feel the same once you've got the wealth. Or secondly, be very present with what you've got and appreciative. And I'm really working on both, really, but the latter as well, because, and then even Tony Robbins is like, if you can't be thankful at a place of lack, right? So if you're always wanting more, you're never going to be happy. But really, we're so blessed with what we've got, Grant. We are so, and I'm just trying to spend more time in my own mindset to be like, got a great house, got 2 fantastic kids, got a lovely wife, I've got my health, which again, a lot of people don't have, right? And there's a saying is you've got 100 problems until your health is one of them, and then you've only got one. So, in that mindset, the big thing that I'm trying to play with is my own presence in life. Stop thinking about the future, be present, be thankful for what you've got. And then the final thing is not mindset, I'll call it soul maybe, or harmony, is everyone has a frequency, right? Which is what you resonate at. And if someone cuts you up in the car while you're driving, your frequency just like automatically. But do you know what? The older I've got, the more I've realized is that frequency doesn't serve you. In my youth, I framed it as, I'm prepped, I'm ready. If something happens, I can defend myself. It's almost like Jason Bourne in a room, always looking at his exits. But the older I get, the more I realize I don't want a fluctuating frequency. I just want to, like, my business partner is a great example. He's always at this level frequency. Nothing can put him off. Good things can, are good, but they don't massively increase his frequency. Bad things don't shift him too far away. And I think that's a great way to approach life, because it means you can handle it more objectively. As soon as you go
Mm.
into that higher frequency state, you're subjective, you're coming from a place of emotion. So
Yeah.
one thing I'm definitely working on is just chill. Like if something's happened or something, how am I framing it? I don't need to raise my frequency, just it's okay. The main one is I guess driving, because I've just had like 30 years of being, well, slightly less, but
Road rage.
it's road rage. But someone doesn't indicate. It's like, well, you've got
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
indicators
Yeah.
for a reason. Why you're not using them? But then again, it's like, well, look, I can't control that. I can only control what I do. And then it's back. So first, being aware of it, and then secondly, just trying to change your own behavior to say, well, look, now I'm just going to accept that people are going to do that, and I'm not going to give away my calm. And that's what I'm working on. It sounds a lot more eloquent when I'm saying it, but it's really, really hard. But
Oh yeah.
that is definitely one of my mindset things that I'm really focusing on. If I can keep that level.
Yeah, it sounds like you're focusing on very similar things to what I am, and I've defined it as the 3 C's, which is to be calm, conscious, and in control. And that's the 3 things that I've been focusing on recently. Is this like level playing field of calmness, being aware of what's going on around me, and being in control of my thoughts and what goes through my head. I mean, you can't control your thoughts, but you can control how you deal with them, right?
Yeah.
Because everyone has the same thoughts. You could look outside and see that it's raining, and you react to it differently to how someone else would react to it. Someone might think, hey, great, my plants are going to get watered. Someone else might think, oh, this is crap. I'm going to have to work in that. So it's the same thought, different reaction. So yeah, I really, really like that approach. And I think you touched on a few things there about, as well as men not having the appreciation. There was a fact that someone said in one of the previous interviews, which was the leading cause of death in men over 40 is suicide.
That's crazy.
Nuts, right?
Yeah.
The show and the Carnivore Entrepreneur is not all about men. I mean, women are welcome, absolutely, if they want to be a carnivore entrepreneur. However, the point is I'm a man, and I think the typical man's man, the cisgender or whatever it is, being a true male is not as common as it used to be.
Yeah.
There's a lot more out there than just being a man or a woman now. I think society is developing and changing, and I think men are getting left behind a little bit. True men.
And I was talking to Chris Hill, and we were talking about this, and he was saying that the way men in society have changed. Like if you look at them as hunter gatherers, they'd get the food and they would come back and they would earn the respect and stuff, and they'll be needed. But what's happening now is men are not necessarily needed in that capacity, right? You don't need to get food.
Yeah.
So there's not that. And now we've got kind of equality. So both men and women go earn. And so then there's also a demand in the house as well, which was not necessarily there. So if I compare myself to my dad was, he hardly ever spoke to us, right? If there was anything, it was go through my mum. And then he would expect my mum to just do everything in the house. And I'm not saying one way is right or wrong. But now, obviously, it's massively different. I spend a shed load of time with my kids. Most of my weekend is, me and my kids going out. But what happens then is you're getting pulled in these different directions, right? And again, if there's a scenario where it's, whatever the family dynamic is, but you're still not, the house is still not clean or something like that, it's still not enough. So then the question you start asking yourself is, I'm still working. I'm trying to do the best I can with a family. It's still not enough. Like, and then there's, depending what the family the setup is, if they're not getting that level of appreciation, then again, I just think it's very, very hard to be a father in nowadays society. And I just feel like it's all expected, and it's just, like a woman, you're supposed to, you're supposed to absolutely spoil her and go all out and, treat her like a queen, which, everyone does try to do, right? But then I just feel like in response, what I've seen in society is it's just expected of the man, right? Like, everything you do is expected. And I just feel that level of appreciation, all a man wants is to be appreciated. right? They don't want,
Yeah, right.
they,
It's extremely simple.
yeah, they don't want like massive things. They're not saying, "Oh, honey, go buy me that Porsche," and they're not saying any of this. They just want appreciation, and I just see that lacking, and I can just see, the man smiling on the outside but cracking on the inside. But again, with the kids on the other side, we're so blessed to have them, right? Like, I have this in my head, but on the other hand, I'm like, any father who's got kids, you're so lucky to have kids. Some people can't have kids, so and you get kind of get that from the kids, right? That unconditional love, and it's just really interesting to see these dynamics. And yeah, I just thought I'd share that, really.
No, excellent. No, really appreciate that. And I think all of that ties into having a healthy mind at the end of the day. Like say, it starts with a healthy body, but then you then manage your mind in a certain way so that, you're on the level and you're not going nuts and you're getting the most productive time in. But at the end of the day, this is why the bank account is part of having true wealth. If you have a healthy mind and a healthy body, but you're homeless,
Yeah.
you can't really enjoy it too much. So the bank account is important as well. If you've got a healthy bank account, it means you don't need to worry about it, and you can focus on your mind and your body. I think that's the key. Is you want to have a healthy bank account so that it gives you that freedom, gives you that life on your terms, so to speak. So I guess, how would you define a healthy bank account for you? What does a healthy bank account look like to you? You don't have to give specific numbers, but just a general picture.
No, so firstly, I think that's spot on. I think so many people get caught up in the wealth game or the bank account game, but they don't have a clear idea of what they want in life. Whereas I've got a clear idea of how I want to live my life. I love kung fu from this. I love spending time with my kids. If I could just do a few more of that per year, which I do anyway, there's no reason I can't do it now. That's all I need financially. So firstly, the bank account needs not to be arbitrary. It needs to be linked to something. What is your ideal life? How much does it cost? And focus on that, because again, I see people just, I want to increase my bank account. I want to increase it this way, but
yeah.
that's an endless game. So I think firstly, have the game in sight, and then secondly, then you need a plan to meet it. So for me, I'm just going to quickly, right at the top there, can you see up there in the green?
Yeah.
Logo of called Money in the Bank. So you've definitely come to the right person. So my journey with that was about 4 years ago. We were spending more than we earn, right? So again, this is an important distinction to make. Again, you could be a football player earning millions, but if you're spending millions, you're relatively neutral or relatively poor. If you're a
Exactly
earning £30,000, but you save £6,000 per year, you've got more disposable income, right? So I think that's a very important distinction to make. So for us, at one point, we were spending more than we were earning. So it's irrelevant what that was, but we were spending more. And that meant we were in the red every month. So for the last 3 years, our general objective has been stop that, right? Keep an eye on that. And then money in the bank. So then 2 years ago, we stopped that. A year ago, we doubled what we were putting away every year. And my goal this year is to double it again. So
excellent. Okay.
So this year, by the end of this year, I should be doubling what I was putting away last year. And that is what I call, that's my way of living on my terms. So again, it's very different. I'm not saying I'm earning this. I'm not saying I'm doing this. So for that, really is about being mindful about what you're spending. Virgin Media tried to charge me £95 for my broadband. And I was like, are you absolutely insane? So again, I'm looking at all my expenses, and I moved that onto, I changed it onto my wife's name. So that's now, viable for the first, when you start as a customer, you get all these benefits, but if you're there, they won't give it to you. So now we're getting that down. So part of that is keeping control of costs. And then secondly is obviously just earning more money, which we try to do as entrepreneurs. So that's my take on it. My take on it is, rather than getting into, I want to, scale this to this, which I am doing, which is a kind of a separate thing with the black box. I'm trying to help as many families as I can, but it really does come down to management and what you want out of it. And a simple metric is, money in the bank. At the end of this year, we're on track at the moment. to double what we were putting in last year. In fact, we'll increase it by another grand. So it would be 150% we would have increased it by.
Excellent. Cool. So what investment vehicles do you put that saving into?
So my main is property, S&P 500. And then the third thing is we are going to be saving up to buy a house. So some of that money we are just putting into bank to increase the coffers, because we know we're going to have some expenditure coming up. But for those two are the most simplest ones for me. And I've been offered different kind of strategies in the past, like crypto or even different property stuff. But I feel comfortable with, I know what my niche is. I know what I do. So that's what I'm doing. And then we split it between S&P 500 as well.
Okay, so you've got sort of some in property and then some in the S&P 500 index fund, just to keep forever, a bit like a pot, that can grow over time.
Yeah, correct. And then just I don't know if we can lead into this, but you said, what am I doing for my protection? So and how have I structured things?
Yeah.
So the other thing that we're doing is, again, this is not advice to anyone. So we're setting up a family investment company. So a family investment company is, you've got 3 layers. When you buy property, you cannot buy it in personal name, which doesn't really give you much tax benefits. You've got a limited company where you can offset the mortgage. And then what you've got is a family investment company, which is what my mum's setting up. And when my mum sets up, it means that we can hold assets, but give our kids shares in trust, which means all the wealth. And, I'm not that old, although relatively old, 45. I'm now already thinking of structuring my assets in a way that can pass down to them. So then what we do, we're going to buy more properties. That's going to go in this company, which means over time we can start gifting those shares to my kids. And we're already starting to think about the wealth transfer, because ultimately I don't want to give that to the government. I don't want to pay 40% inheritance tax. And that's probably the big shift that we're doing this year, is restructuring the way we hold assets to be legacy effective, really.
Yeah. And I think you mentioned something before about spending more than you earn. I think entrepreneurs, a lot of them will just focus on getting more and more and more and more, and don't focus on what they're spending each month. I know I've been there. And actually, something hit home with me before, which was, if you don't manage your own personal expenses like a business, then how can you manage your business like a business?
Yeah. It is very easy to go out and eat way too often, or whatever those things are. But like you said, the art of managing it and reviewing it will give you all the information you need.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So just to wrap up on the bank account stuff, then some really good stuff in there. Get your setup right, get your structure right that makes sense for you. Put your money into safe assets. Spend less than you earn, so you've got some actual money to put away. I mean, that's all just basic tactics which some people forget or are not doing. What do you think is the most overlooked strategy by entrepreneurs when they're setting up their protection or their wills?
What is I honestly think is not getting it done. Because what
actually not doing it.
And that so it's a bit slight twisting is no one I speak to says, Akash, do you know what? I disagree with you. We should not do this. I think no one says that. I think the biggest thing is not getting started, because having something in place is much better than having a advanced structure. I didn't get to an advanced structure without having something in place. I started with something. I've got a good enough will from my solicitor. I've got power of attorney. I've got life insurances. But every year we review it and we see what has changed, because everything changes, right? So, you might have another kid, you might have another asset, you might sell an asset. So you review it. So, but what happens that I find is we speak to people and they're like, yeah, do you know what? I really need to get it done. But then what happens is the urgent, day-to-day life takes over what's the important. And I think the biggest mistake entrepreneurs make is not having anything in place in the first place. So, and the second one is thinking one part of the puzzle is everything. We've got an analogy is, you've got 3 levels of protection. The first is you've got nothing in place and you're out in the storm, anything can happen to you. The second is you've built a glass house, and that means you've got one part of the puzzle thinking that that's going to protect you. But the reality is, when the inevitable happens, if a stone throw hits that glass house, it all comes crashing down. When really what you want is a coherent system. Everything talks to each other. The wills say the same as the life insurance, the power of attorney is registered. The executor knows that they're an executor. There's silly scenarios where a lot of people, the statistics will shock you. The executors don't even know they've been nominated as an executor. So the first point is getting it in place is the most important thing. And we've created a program to help people do that in 4 weeks. And the second is structuring it coherently so everything speaks to each other, and it can actually protect you when you need it. Otherwise, what's the point of having this stuff?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's the benefit that we got by going through the black box. I mean, we had a will and life insurance and things set up before. So we had a basic setup, but actually we hadn't reviewed it in a long time. And upon reviewing it, we actually found some better products that we could use. And also we needed to change the level of cover that we had because our wealth had changed, and a lot of people don't think about that. They think like set it and forget it, which is that glass house that you're thinking about, that you're talking about, or they don't do it at all. And we were the set it and forget it. We did it in 2018 and hadn't looked at it since 2018, when actually a lot of things have changed.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Awesome. So we're getting near the end now. What I always like to finish up on is just some quick fire questions. So let's wrap things up. What is your favorite book and why?
My favorite book is The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. So
nice. Love that book.
It's more sentimental for what it did for me. I was in a corporate job. I was a project manager, which I've been doing for 10 years. And I was looking at starting my business with Shiv. And I came to a point where I was thinking, should I leave it? And it's such a tough decision to leave the corporate world to then, start business. But then looking at the 4-Hour Workweek, it's so actionable as well. It was like, well, if you leave, what's the worst that could happen? Okay. Can you move in with parents if you've lost everything? Yes. Can you get another job in the future? Well, yes. And just really helped me rationalize and make that massive leap. So 4-Hour Workweek for me was the bridge between me leaving the corporate world and starting off in business. I'd highly recommend it to everyone, for anyone looking to systemize and optimize how they're working. And especially if you're thinking about leaving the corporate world, I thought that was fantastic.
Nice. Yeah, well, love that book. And definitely, if you haven't read it, 100% read it. Cool. How do you want to be remembered?
It's a very, very good question. I guess I want to be remembered for being the best version of me. I want to say, there's two parts from a.
I like that.
Yeah, from a professional perspective, I just want to help as many people as I can, right, and protect people. And when shit hits the fan, I'll be like, I'm so glad I put this in place. So that's one. But secondly, it's my obligation, or my main drive in life, is just to be the best I can, right? Because if you're the best you can be, you can support your family. I think a lot of people often disserve themselves, right? And life is about service to yourself and service to others. And, a medium in the middle is where you want to be. But I've always been like, I have to try and be the best I can be to serve people. And I chase it every single day, physically, mentally, the bank account, right? And I just guess you've got a great opportunity being alive in this world. And for me, if I just sat there and did nothing, it would be the worst thing. So every day I do that. I try to do better, and I live it now, Grant. My friends say, "Oh, you went to China with your daughter. How amazing!" And I just want more of this stuff where all this stuff I dreamt of as a kid. There's no reason not to do it now. Me and my son went to Snowdon together, and everyone's like, "Oh, well, I can't believe Caden climbed Mount Snowdon." I just want more of this. I want to be remembered as that person who took life by the balls and just and just did everything he wanted. Because and then I want that to go through to my kids, and my kids to grow up and live life rather than let it pass them by.
Excellent. Cool. So, last but not least, if you could leave our listeners with one thing today, what would it be?
I would say, and it's probably very cliche, is just try to be more present. And it's so cliche, but you've got so many distractions. You've got wars going on that can really stress you out. You've got other stuff going on in your life. You're trying to make money. There's all this shit going on, and you're worried about it. You're worried about the future. You're trying to get somewhere. But the reality is, you're never going to get this time again. And the best example I can give is my wife went away one time. And rather than thinking, oh, I've got to look after the kid, I was like, yes, the kids are mine. I get to look after the kids. And we were in one bed, we were sleeping together, and they were fighting. And I just had this out-of-body experience where I looked down on myself and said, I've got both of my kids, one's 10, one's 6. And I was like, nothing in life, I'm just getting a bit emotional here, but it's nothing in life is ever going to compete with this moment. No matter what business I build, no matter how much money I earn, nothing will be better than this moment where I'm here with my kids. What more in life is there? And if you start to appreciate those things, you'll be a very blessed person. And that's my one takeaway I would give to people is just if you look for it, you are blessed. If you look for the problems, you'll find those problems. But if you look for it, I'm sure you'll find you are very blessed. Yeah. Live a blessed life.
Absolutely. What you focus on, you get more of. Be more present.
Exactly.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, cool. Nice. Great one to finish on. So if people want to get in contact with you, how would you like them to get in contact? Obviously, this will all be in the show description notes, but how would you like people to get in contact with you?
Sure. I think maybe email is the best. So my email is akash@onpointmortgages.com. That's akash@onpointmortgages.com. Happy to talk about life. Happy to support anyone with their needs. It's been fantastic. Thank you so much for having me, Grant.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you very much, Akash. And looking forward to what the future holds and seeing how your journey goes, really. But yeah, thank you for joining, and I'll speak to you soon. Take care.
Thank you very much, Grant. Cheers.
If this episode resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. You are a carnivore entrepreneur. Live life how it was supposed to be lived on your terms with strength, energy, and purpose. I'll see you on the next episode.